There can be miracles when you believe. Go. When you believe. When hope is frail, it's hard to kill. Who knows what miracles? Your turn.
No,
You can achieve.
I feel embarrassed about myself.
When you believe. Everybody. Somehow you will. Do, 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 do. You will when you. Hey.
Yep.
Welcome to Clearly.
Sorry I didn't join in the singing, but it isn't
I'm not going to resolve that. Go ahead.
You're not?
No, I'm going to leave it out there.
Oh my gosh. You're going to drive every musician crazy.
Believe.
Okay, there it is.
There it
it
was.
is.
You got to leave them hanging.
Okay, so true. The soundtrack, the score for Prince of Egypt
Goat.
is amazing.
Goat.
I mean, it is. If you've never seen the Prince of Egypt, it's just time for you to go rent it somewhere.
Nobody who listens to our
and go watch it.
Did you say rent it somewhere?
From the
library?
That's
Are
where
you
I rent
100
movies.
years old?
That's where I get my DVDs from.
DVDs? What? Do we get a time machine? You know what I've been renting? VHSs, the puffy ones that Disney used to make, the puffy cases. You know, the Great Mouse Detective.
But it's called renting when you rent on Apple TV too. So I don't know. Yeah, but
you went straight to renting DVDs in the library.
That is my go-to. We have a great library, and I just go peruse the shelves of DVDs and Blu-ray discs and check them out from my library for free.
When I was your age, we had a Blockbuster card. Welcome to Clearly, guys.
Jimmy and Kelly here, talking to you about the Book of Exodus because we think it's amazing. Thus, why we're talking about the movie Prince of Egypt, which is loosely telling the same narrative, but not
it's good.
Exactly.
But with Ralph Fiennes as Pharaoh, Val Kilmer as Moses,
Sandra Bullock as Miriam,
and the voice of God shall be played by...
Did you...
I couldn't remember.
You couldn't look it up?
Hold on.
What are you doing?
Hey Siri, who played God in the movie The Prince of Egypt? Val Kilmer played God.
And Moses?
No. Who played Moses? Hey Siri, who played Moses in The Prince of Egypt? Val Kilmer?
I'm your huckleberry.
Okay, that's...
Val Kilmer
sure
is
that's
God
right?
and Moses?
We're probably wrong. Anyway.
My whole theological grid is broken now.
So...
All right, I don't know. Somebody's going to send us an email. Okay.
Point is,
great.
Prince of Egypt is amazing, and you should definitely go watch it.
But you know what's more amazing? The Book of Exodus.
But what's more amazing is the book that it is based on, right? The book is always better than the movie, guys.
Oh.
Always better than the movie.
Especially when it's the Bible.
Especially when it's the Bible.
So we're here talking about
yes.
all the books of the Bible. This is our sales pitch for them. We want to get you hyped up about them. We just did Genesis last week.
That's right.
We're doing Exodus this week, and all this is you've been calling it like
it's a book recommendation,
a spiritual
from a
book recommend
from a friend.
Yes.
Or a movie review. You know, when you've read just your favorite, you just put down a book or you ended a movie, and you're like, that was amazing. And you call up your friend or you run into them the next day and you're like, oh my gosh, you have to see it. And here's why. And you don't give everything away, but you tell them which is your favorite, what they should. Yes, that's what we're doing.
Yes, that's right.
With the Book of Exodus.
With the Book of Exodus. So let's kind of start like we did last time and give this. These are why episodes. Why read it, not what episodes. But you need some of the what, especially if you're coming in cold and you don't know a ton about the book. So let's give you some orientation to the landscape. Exodus is the second book of your Bible is written by none other than Val Kilmer. Well, that's not true. Val Kilmer would have written it had he, forget it. Moses wrote Exodus.
Moses wrote Exodus. Yes. Along with Genesis.
Yes. That's right.
Moses is the author of the first 5 books of the Bible, including this one. So,
and
who's he writing to? That's an as important question. You know, if you're not asking that about your Bible, that's a really helpful question to ask. Who was this book originally written to? What was the first audience of the book? Can give you so much insight. And the first audience are the newly freed Israelites who would have just lived this.
That's right.
This would have been very fresh history, that they are on the other side of the story of Exodus, and they are moving toward the land that God has promised them, but they're not there yet.
Yep.
That's who this book would have been written for originally. And obviously, we know it is also written for us. It is God-breathed for our benefit as well, but that's who's first receiving
That's right.
this text.
The way to think about it is this book was written to the Israelites who just were brought out of Egypt, but it was written for us. To them, for us. That's a helpful way to think of every book in the Bible. No book of the Bible was written to you, but every book of the Bible was written for you.
That's right.
And then we had to talk about the genre. If you've never given much thought to genre, like literature genre, it makes a world of difference. You could be coming into a book thinking it's going to look and feel and sound like one thing, and it shows up a different way. And if you don't understand that you should have been thinking about it in this different way, you're going to have all kinds of problems. You're going to interpret things wrong. You're going to demand it say things that it was never wanting to say. So what genre are we in with the book of Exodus? How would you say? Well, I think you kind of split it a little bit right down the middle. The first part of Exodus is very clearly, it's all historical. It's all historical. It's giving a historical account of the events.
It's a historical narrative
of Moses' day.
I would say.
Historical narrative.
Is its own unique. It's telling a story.
Yep.
A historically accurate story.
That's right. And then at one point around Exodus 25, it turns a corner, and most people don't feel the historical narrative part so much. They feel the, am I in a manual for how to build tents?
That's when people's Bible reading plans, when they start them for a year, drop off, is usually the second half of Exodus. Like,
that's
wait.
Right. We had a good run, Bible reading plan.
I feel like one of our children came to us at some point. They were like, Exodus, because it's, they knew Prince of Egypt, the movie, or it's exciting and fun. And then at one point, one of them was like, Mom, do I have to read this? It's like measurements and
well, our son Ben, he's 9, and he's reading the book of Exodus. He reads like a chapter a morning, and I was asking him the other day, I was like, what are you reading about right now, buddy? He's like, how the Ark of the Covenant lid goes on top and you put I'm like, wow, man, I love you. Stick with it.
Right, so what genre would you call that second half of Exodus?
That's going to feel much more like how we feel when you hear the word law giving. It's instructions to the people to do certain things, and it's going to continue like that sort of for the rest of the book. And it is getting in the weeds of some stuff that if you don't have eyes for why this matters, it will feel a little weird to you. But instruction, law giving, and historical narrative all sort of bound up in one thing.
Right.
So
yeah. Can I tell you one of my favorite things about Exodus?
You may not.
Sorry, I will anyway.
Not tell me, which means you
double
may
negative.
tell me. Literature.
So we know going into the book of Exodus, because of what it's named, that there is, we know like some type of salvific moment is going to happen, right? An exodus, a leaving, like that's what the word means. So you're coming into the book already knowing a rescue mission is happening, right? That's kind of what you know. And if you're familiar with the Bible, you already know that's happening, right? You've seen maybe the movie. And here's something that I'll never forget the first time I noticed this. This rescue mission starts out in chapter 1 with 5 women.
Hey!
5 very pro-life women. Like, that's, I think, such a fun way to, but like, if you really look at it, the Israelites at the beginning of the book of Exodus have grown huge to a huge nation. It's a threat now to the new Pharaoh who's in charge. And he asks for all of the baby boys to be killed. And he pulls the Hebrew midwives in, Puah and Shifra are their names, and he tells them.
You just have that in your pocket?
No, I've studied. I've written articles about it. So
just whipping out
Puah and Shifra. Do you remember, if you've listened to this podcast for a while, we've talked about this. I had a mentor who told told me, become an expert in the women of the Old Testament. And I took him seriously, which is probably how I first noticed this. Is I was
Have
like,
I told you guys this before? This is a true story. Have I told you this?
I think you have. On the
She
podcast.
went through the whole Bible and just wrote down the names of every woman in the Bible and then wrote what they did next to it. My wife is. I don't know like if that's psychopathic.
It's
like
not.
per se.
It's fun.
But I think it's amazing.
It
makes me more attracted to you.
Oh, thank you. I guess.
All right, keep going.
Anyway, so I'm noticing women in the Bible, and I'm like, wow, there's 5 right off the bat. Like Moses survives because of these women. So Pua and Shiphrah, the midwives, are commanded to kill the baby boys, and it says they feared God and they didn't. They refused. And then even before that, you have Jochebed. Is that how you'd say her name? Moses' mom. Okay,
You could say any name right now.
Okay.
Michael. I don't know.
Moses' mom, who hides him for 3 months in the middle of this, like baby boy should be killed and surrendered, right? She is fighting for his life, puts him in the basket. So there's 3 women. Miriam, Moses' sister, is on lookout for him in the river. And she uses so much strategy and like very subtlety in the 5th woman's life, Pharaoh's daughter, who finds Moses. And Miriam finds a way to make it really easy for her to essentially adopt him in a way that would make it like not super stressful. She's like, hey, I can help you out. And because of all of that, 5 women who a baby that would have been thrown away, right, without a care, who essentially say, no, these children are worth our time. All of them, they're the reason that this story is even possible. So it's really interesting to me that, again, what are we learning about God? He opens this rescue account with 5 ordinary women fighting for children, caring for babies.
Yeah.
And probably, well, all but Miriam probably don't see the full expression of what their sacrifice did, because Pua and Shiphrah are probably not alive when that happens. His mom's probably not alive when that happens. Miriam's, so it's like they're just the seed of this amazing story. Anyway, it's one of my favorite. That's why you should read it.
Look at that. That was good. That was a good sales pitch.
Thanks, babe.
And lest we miss that this is an incredibly ancient book in the Judeo-Christian tradition, this tradition that gets, for whatever reason, like a bad rap, like we're oppressive to women. And like from the jump, like the heroes in the story.
Right. Are no one who you would expect.
Yeah.
In that culture.
The dignity that the Bible constantly confers upon women in the scripture is actually remarkable, and you should keep an eye out for it because it's pretty awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's a favorite thing of mine. Do you have any favorite moments or significant things about this book that you love?
This book is it really is wonderful. I love how it reminds suffering people that they're seen by God. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's the setting you enter into in the opening of the book, is the people of God are now oppressed by Egypt. There rose up a Pharaoh who didn't remember Joseph, and he was wanting to just build his empire, and he's putting the nation under the thumb, and repeatedly it talks about God seeing his people, hearing their cries, and then he moves toward them in help by raising up a leader to remove them from their struggle. And so I just think it is beautiful that life's got a lot of suffering. I don't feel like I've experienced near the suffering that so many folks around me have, but even I'm comforted by just the fact that when we are in it, our cries really do go up to a person who hears.
Who cares?
And cares and is eager to respond. And I think that's one of the things that the book of Exodus does so poignantly. Right. But it's never, God's never comfortable with simplistic framings of things. You know, that's the other thing that's really interesting about Exodus. It's not just people who suffer at the hand of an oppressor. Those same sufferers are virtually all scoundrels.
No heroes in the Bible.
They are the worst. So the Bible is very clear-eyed about this. You have these people who are being oppressed by another nation. They're clearly the victims here, and yet repeatedly they're shown in a really unflattering light as they grumble against Moses, as they doubt God's hand in things, as even after they're removed from Egypt and rescued by God, like it's 13 seconds later and they're going, gosh, we're hungry. This was a terrible idea. Can't we go back to Egypt where we can eat some onions, for crying out loud? And you're like, whoa, I thought you guys were the victims. And it's like, no, they're the victims.
They are the victims.
And they're the violators.
There's still sin in
That's
suffering.
Right. Suffering and sinning can happen at the same time.
That's not a category that I don't think our culture has.
That's what I'm saying.
Is when you're a victim, you're only a victim. And there's no, if someone's really suffering, essentially what we feel is it's totally inappropriate when somebody is suffering to confront them about their sin.
Right.
Or anything that they might be doing wrong, because look at how they've suffered. It's like those things are not mutually exclusive. And it's good that we don't think that way. I think something you're bringing up that I think is really important and why this book is valuable is not only is it an encouragement to us in suffering, it's really helping us see what it looks like to be liberated from suffering, the external suffering, and what it has done to us internally. I don't know, like I resonate so much with this in my own, everything from, like, we look at it and God sees, notices, and we see that he's doing something. And because we're not in their story, we're immediately able to see, oh, look at God. He's about to wield his power. He's about to set them free in these major, huge ways. But to the Israelites, it doesn't feel like that. It's not an overnight switch. Yeah. God noticed, and all of a sudden, the next night, woohoo, I'm free.
That's right.
Everything's better. Everything's happy. All discomfort's been removed. It gets worse before it gets better, which again has helped me to go, in my suffering, sometimes God's answer and help means it gets worse before it gets better. And then it's a journey after that. And even on the other side of true freedom, through the Red Sea, on the other side, those lingering effects of suffering are still in our own hearts and have to be worked out. It's a more complex journey and even all you said about suffering and sin. It's like in my suffering, there's sin that can sneak into that I might not be aware of, that can be really damaging, that I need to have an eye out for. So it's such a helpful study on suffering, how God goes about bringing about rescue and restoration from that, and what it's like to be a very fallen and weak and sinful human being in that process. That's what you're watching, is a bunch of weak sinners in the middle of that process, and it's messy and it's complicated, and it's like, that's what it felt like for me. Yeah. So I'm not doing anything wrong because I resonate with that, and that doesn't mean just because I feel some of that mess in my own redemptive story doesn't mean God's not answering. That's right. Just like I can see that he was answering there, he is answering in my life, even though it's not this magic wand of poof, everything's gone. Yeah, it's realistic. That's very true.
Hey guys, we could not do Clearly without our podcast partners, and we want you to be one of them. So we asked one of them if they'd tell you why they're one of them. Cue the clip.
I think one of the things about Clearly is that it's given me vocabulary for topics that are difficult or weighty or heavy to talk about. I think in a lot of the topics we cover on Clearly, that is the vibe, is that it's kind and it's gracious and it's truthful, and those are things that can exist together. You can say a hard thing in a way that is loving, or you can explain a difficult thing in a way, or even a heated or a topic that could be or is debated with a little bit of heat in the Christian world. And I just think the podcast does such a great job of bringing a lot of grace to those things. It makes me want to partner with you guys in that, just to help keep it going in any way I can.
I'll tell you another thing that I love about this book, that I think you'll love about this book is, and we could have maybe said this even about the Genesis story too, but you really start getting a glimpse of God's heart for the nations. Yeah. That, one of the maybe impressions that you and I would have of God, especially in the Old Testament, is His entire interest is just on the nation of Israel. And there's some ways in which that's true. Those are God's chosen people. It's through that group of people that he's raising up the Messiah through. Like his attention is definitely focused on them. But if you pay attention enough, you're going to start noticing, God's burden for people to know and treasure him expands beyond this small nation. It's really broad. So in the Exodus account, even you get God's motive for why he's having the events unfold as they do. Why is it? God could do anything, right? He could have heard Israel's cry and gone, okay, guys, let's get you out of there. And, sent some stormtroopers to pull. I don't know, stormtroopers seems like a bad idea because they're the bad guys. An
angel of the Lord.
Yeah, that's better. That's better than stormtrooper. Stormtrooper, bad guy.
God has often sent an angel of the Lord to
desert stormtroopers. No, I don't know. I've got nothing.
Wow.
Here's what I'm saying.
Worse.
He could have just gotten him out of there. But there's this whole thing that unfolds and 10 plagues and Pharaoh's heart hardening, and you're going, why'd you do it this way? What are you up to? And you get insight. God reveals why throughout the book. So Exodus 7, we'll put it like this in verse 3. He says, so God's talking, but I will harden Pharaoh's heart that I shall multiply my signs and wonders in the land of Egypt. He goes on in verse 5 to explain why. Why is he doing this? Why did he harden Pharaoh's heart? Why is so that he could unfold these wonders? Why? Verse 5, the Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord when I stretch out my hand on Egypt and bring out the sons of Israel in their midst. So what is the purpose for God extending this whole ordeal, causing Pharaoh's heart to harden, signs and wonders taking place in Egypt? Why? So that all of Egypt will know who the true God is. So that a testimony about Yahweh would go out to the earth, that there is one God, and he is a rescuer, and he is a redeemer, and he cares about justice, and he is right and true and followable. It's like, that's amazing. These are the early parts of your Bible. Right. This isn't the book of Acts. Right. This is Exodus. And here we get, God cares about Israel deeply, but he's got a bigger plan he's working. He wants to testify to his greatness to the whole world that he is who he is.
Oh, and so much of what we'll see in the rest of the Bible is that this is how God is known and identified. Like, this is such a major world event, the exodus of the Israelites from Egypt in the miraculous way that they were saved, that all the time it's being referenced, and in more nations than just their own. And what comes to mind as you were talking is Rahab in Jericho. So this is in the book of Joshua, so this is, a while from this moment, but here's what she says. So this is a non-Israelite, the lowest on the totem pole of the people in her society. She's a prostitute, she's a woman, and these spies, the Israelite spies, come into her house and are hidden by her. But she says this: "For we have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea before you when you came out of Egypt, and what you did to the two kings who were beyond the Jordan, and they were utterly destroyed. When we heard it, our hearts melted, and no courage remained in any man any longer because of you. For the Lord your God, he is God, in heaven above and on earth beneath." She knows, Rahab knows.
She heard the story.
Who God is because of what happens in Exodus, because it was such a monumental event, played out the way that it was, that it was able to expand beyond this one place on earth into many other places and countries and civilizations, and even in generations past. And that made a way for a woman like Rahab to come to saving faith in that God. And we know not only will she be saved from Jericho, but she will find herself in the lineage of the Messiah, which is crazy. But because of what's happening in Exodus, it's like this is such a huge moment for so much of the rest of the scriptures.
Now, all that being said, there is some tough stuff in this book. So don't get it twisted. You're going to jump into Exodus and you're going to be like fired up, and then you are going to hit chapter 25 and you're going to go, why do I need a measuring tape now?
Purple curtains and the design that's on them.
So Exodus is where we begin to get some of God's law unfolding, like his formal law. You get the 10 Commandments in Exodus chapter 20, so you're getting some of that. And then it moves into this really minute details about a tent, something called a Tabernacle, and this fancy box called the Ark of the Covenant, and a lid. Why are we spending so much time on a lid called the Bema seat? And then there's poles going into it, and the way it's constructed, and then like priest garments and like what they need to look like, and how puffy the hat is, and like the all these things. You're going, why? Why should I pay attention to that? And if you're not careful, this is the part where you go, okay. And now let's move on to Leviticus, and then you're going to move to Leviticus, and you're going to go, and now we're moving on to Numbers, and by the time you're done, you're just going to hop on over to John, right? That's what you're going to do.
Don't do that.
Don't you do?
All
John's
of Exodus is amazing.
We're pro John, but yes, stick with it.
The second half of Exodus is wonderful.
Kelly, help me help them see what is it about the tabernacle and the Ark of the Covenant? Why is that meaningful at all? Why would God? He wrote a book, and you could make the argument as like, God, couldn't you make that more interesting? Or whatever. Like, why?
Yes.
Why does
I have asked him that before. Lord, do I need to know about how many centimeters it was?
Could you give any kind of like help to us?
I feel like you're so much more qualified to answer this, than I am. But what's helped me the most is to know everything is in here on purpose, and God has something for me in this. And so when I've paid attention to that, and really thinking about it as a whole, right? This is the building phase of this thing called the tabernacle, which, if you remember what we talked about in the last episode in Genesis, like God is not a plan B God, he is a plan A, right? And in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth and man, and dwelt with man together in the garden. So what God is after is dwelling with man. He is after being with his people, and sin creates a problem. Sin and God do not coexist. And so even from this early stage in the identity of the Israelites are new, they've just been slaves. They're coming into their own as a nation. What's their identity? Priority number one for God, I'm going to dwell with you. I'm going to find a way to be with you even as you journey. It's like, we're not even going to say pause on that till we get to the land, and then we'll build a temple and it'll be all settled. It's almost like, why would you unpack all your luggage when you're, still moving halfway across the country? But it's like at the beginning of the journey, they haven't even left. And God's like, hold on. First of all, I'm going to dwell in your midst, and we're going to create a system where I can dwell in this tabernacle that's movable, and a system to where I can dwell with you and move with you. That's right. So important to their identity as a nation, is the very presence of God with them. And that's so much of what this is about. So much. If you want to think about it like this, the tabernacle and all that, you can think of it like a micro Eden. Mm-hmm. Maybe think of it like a micro Eden, because what all the Bible's trying to do, Kelly's right, is get mankind back to where they can be in communion with God again. Right. But we have sin now, so we can't be in proximity to him unless there's protocol and to deal with our sin. And so the tabernacle and the sacrificial system was created by God so that we could get back into proximity with him. And that tabernacle was sort of a functional micro Eden. I mean, think about it. They even the way it was set up, the entrance to the tabernacle always faced east. Which way were Adam and Eve kicked out of the garden? Which way did they go out? East, right? And so to come back into his presence, you're doing the east thing again. Later you're going to see there's two angels on the separating wall, the curtain between the special place, the Holy of Holies, and the holy place. And in the Holy of Holies is where the ark is, and that's where God meets with his people. Why are there two angels there? Well,
what was there in the garden when Adam and Eve were removed? There were angels there with swords, flaming swords, keeping them out. So you see all the imagery.
Right.
It's recreating Eden again and saying, hey, I want you back in with
Right.
me. And so everywhere you go, you're going to have a visual of what you lost and what I want to get you back to.
Right.
And so when you're reading chapters 25 and following in Exodus,
Pay attention.
Yeah, don't read it
Yes.
with this bored attitude. It's actually incredibly important to the plan God has for his people to get them back with him.
Right.
Yeah.
You should pay attention to it like when you're reading a mystery novel. That's my encouragement. When I read a novel that I know is a mystery, or I'm watching a movie that's very Sherlock Holmes-like, I know what I'm in for. I'm not going to know who did it, but there's going to be little hints along the way. And so little innocuous things that happen, I'm like, ooh, wait a minute, he turned left, not right. I don't have any clue what that means, but I'm going to pay attention because I want to figure it out. Maybe I'm not the only one like that. I'm always trying to beat the author or the person who created the movie to the punch and figure it out before him. And I know that comes from paying attention to the details, that they're all there intentionally for me. And I'm going to write them down, pay attention. It's like all that's happening in the second half of Exodus are little hints at what's to come. And they're going to come up not just in the rest of the Old Testament, but in the New Testament.
That's right.
The bread of the presence, right? The keep out sign that one of our favorite kids' books calls that curtain with angels, the keep out sign of God's presence is going to show up right at Jesus' crucifixion as a key component. And all of these little things are going to show up in the rest of your Old Testament and New Testament. So pay attention because God's telling you something. If it's written in there, it's on purpose. It's not to bore you to sleep, and it's not because it's ancient stuff that doesn't matter for you anymore.
Yeah.
Pay attention like that, even if you don't know yet how it's going to all connect. It all matters.
I like that mystery novel thing. I'm stealing
Analogy.
that.
Do it.
Yeah.
That is what I.
Will you
that's
be
how
mad
I
if I
read.
credit myself with coming up for it every time I say it? Hey, I had this awesome analogy.
I wouldn't be mad. I'd just give you a hard time about it, and
Yeah.
that would be really fun.
That's fair. Okay.
So.
Okay, so
Yes.
last question. You've got all 66 books, and you grab Exodus and you throw it out. It's gone now. Kelly, what have we lost? What do we lose with Exodus being out of our Bible? Or say it positively, what is gained by the fact that God put this book with this content in our 66 books, which make up the Bible? You answer, I'll answer. You go first.
Well, I went first last time.
Okay, I'll go first.
Okay, you go.
Okay, here's my answer. Kelly, you said it earlier, but the singular event of the Old Testament is the extraction of the people of Israel from Egypt in the Exodus story and the Passover and all that. That is the event. That is the redemptive event of focus in the whole rest of the Old Testament. If you just crack open the Psalms,
Yep.
it's like every third psalm
Right.
is going to be referencing the Exodus and the events that took place there and what God did to rescue his people from slavery. It is the thing. It is the most important redemptive event in the entire Old Testament. And that event is a type of what's coming in Jesus. That event is not an end in itself. God looking at an oppressed people who are under the thumb of a taskmaster, who are crying out to him for help, and him coming down with a rescuer and extracting them out of that situation to bring him into covenant relationship with himself forever. Does that sound familiar at all? That's exactly what's happening when we get to our New Testament. We are under the oppressor, not of Egypt, but of our sinfulness. And God sees us in our brokenness and in our need, and he comes to us. But he doesn't just send any old prophet. He sends his very son. And his son comes and is our functional Moses, leading us out of captivity, out of slavery, out of our sin, and into the promised land of God's presence forever through his efforts on the cross. And you see Jesus making these connections in the Gospels when he sort of reorients the disciples' mind of what the Passover is and what it's referencing.
Right.
He breaks the bread, and what used to be a different symbol during the Passover meal in the Old Testament now is Jesus infusing it with new meaning. This is my body broken for you. The wine is my blood of the new covenant poured out. He repurposes and gives new significance to the Passover meal that they were eating on the night that that the 10th plague was taking place in the Exodus account. So you see, all of Exodus is really pointing to a greater Exodus that's coming, and it was fulfilled in Jesus Christ. So if you lose the book of Exodus, you lose the first macro telling of the gospel. Really,
it is. It's like Act 1 in the salvation story. It's,
that's right.
Or it's like preview of coming attractions.
That's right.
Yeah. It's like, this is setting the stage for what's about to happen, and it is interesting, even as you bring up the Passover, that in that moment, that's one of the plagues that happens. It's written totally differently in the book of Exodus. It just changes, the pattern of the narrative changes at that moment, and it begins with a remember, do this. Remember this moment, like the installing of the Passover as the very first festival that this newly formed nation is commanded to do annually in remembrance as the Passover. And that is the festival of the many festivals Israel had, that they will have eventually, right? That Jesus is crucified during, that it's in God's providence, that it's during that moment of all of Israel remembering and recalling to mind Exodus, that Jesus goes to the cross.
That's right.
And that is on purpose, so intentionally. So it's like, yes, we can just zoom out, quickly go to the end of the story and read, the Gospels and read about Jesus. But it's to spend time in the book of Exodus is going to infuse that moment that we already appreciate as New Testament Christians with so much more beauty, depth, meaning, sight, sound, feels, visuals. I mean, it's going to help it come alive in a totally different way when you read that and spend time in it, and the end of the story.
That's right.
And we lose all of that if we don't have this book, and we don't spend time in it, in both parts of it. The fun narrative part in the beginning, and this, what's the fruit happening in the aftermath of this nation and what God is preparing for them.
Yeah.
So that's why you need the book of Exodus in your life. Read all of it today in one sitting. Ready?
Right now. Go.
Okay, guys. I hope you loved this conversation about Exodus, and I hope you're...
Me too. That is crazy. We are on the same wavelength. Keep going.
Does that even... do you even know what I just said? That doesn't even make sense.
Yeah, that we both hope they had enjoyed them.
Yes, we do hope you had a good time. And don't forget, we are creating these amazing, clearly one-pagers for each book of the Bible.
What?
Where you can just buy this for less than a cup of coffee at your local coffee shop for $5.
What is it, Kelly? Tell me what it is.
It is a one sheet of
paper. She's doing great with this pitch, guys. A clearly one-pager is a helpful guide to walk you through every book of the Bible. We are making these for every single book of the Bible. It's not just information about the book. It's a guide to help you discover the important information about the books.
Right.
Categories of things that you might have missed, people that you need to keep an eye out for, themes that reoccur, words that show up repeatedly. It's all in these guides, and we're practically giving it away for $5 each for all of the books of the Bible. Yeah,
because think about it. If you're going to read Exodus, that's going to take you, for most people, it's going to take you several weeks. And so this
Speak
is
for yourself. Am I right?
This is a guide that you're going to keep with you and work through that. All your notes and just things that you're collecting and studying and writing down here are there for you to keep. It's right inside your Bible.
And watch this. Watch this. It fits right inside the old biblio.
So We think they're an incredibly valuable resource. We think it's going to be helpful to you as you make your way through the book of Exodus to discover it for yourself. We're not giving you the answers. This is not information as much as it is a guide to help you discover the information for yourself. See it for yourself, explore that with the Lord together. And so we're excited about it. And if you are a monthly partner, a current monthly podcast partner, you're getting these for free.
What?
Sent straight to you through Patreon.
What's happening? Like, what in the literal is happening? You know what I mean? Like,
Wow.
My goodness.
So if you're already thinking to yourself, I probably want to buy each one of these, that's pretty much the same as becoming a monthly partner with us. So
why don't you?
On
Why
top
are you
of that,
wasting your life?
you get all these for free, and you get to be a part of our live recordings, which we promise are so much fun.
What else do you want from us, guys? We're giving you everything.
Maybe not.
These people.
But you can go to patreon.com, join us as a monthly partner, and you will get access to each of these guides, the ones that we've released so far, Genesis and Exodus, and every one in the future. Leviticus coming next.
Numbers.
So excited about
Not Deuteronomy.
Leviticus.
Oh yeah, Deuteronomy.
Clearly one-pagers. We're excited about it. Print it out from home. Have access to it. It's going to be great.
We'll see you next time.
And next time, we're jumping into Leviticus. I love Leviticus, and that is true.
Sacrifices.
See you next time.